Hi everybody, I'm here today with Glenn Debke, who's a colleague of mine, a good friend, and a traditional naturopath. And earlier this week, both Glenn and myself sent out articles. I actually also sent Glenn's article out on what you can do to help protect yourself from nuclear fallout. And this is especially pertinent right now and timely because of what's going on over in Japan with the Fukushima reactors, and now we know that actually some of this is coming over to the United States. So, just to preface where we're at right now, is that we've had a week or so, a little more than a week, to see what's actually going to come over here and to really see what people are doing in response to this disaster, and how what are the areas that we could really provide a service to people by getting information out to you so that you can actually act on it in a way that's healthy for you. Because both Glenn and myself are all about natural health, and so anyway, that's what we have for you today. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Manny. Thanks for inviting me into the conversation with yourself and really the rest of the world there.
Yeah, and I've got to say that I've gotten some great feedback on both your article and what I put out as well. People are thankful for the service that you've provided. I am certainly, and because there's so much information out there,
right?
You've kind of got this dichotomy of there's this kind of people who are in fear, in real fear, who are responding as if we've had a nuclear war, and the way that they're responding to the levels of radiation that they may think that they're going to be getting, and so the response that they're taking to that. And then there are people who are kind of writing it off and saying there's absolutely no health effects. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, yeah, it's almost like, and it's kind of funny, and when we were talking about this earlier, it's either the oh shit, we're all going to die, or we have the experts from the nuclear field saying that, oh well, this is no big deal, this is normal radiation, and to me there's we're already in a radioactively poisoned world, right? So different people ask me, well, how much is too much radiation? Well, we're probably already living in it. If we live in a civilized community, there's already too much radiation, so anything that we're adding to it is creating a challenge for us.
Right, you've got all kinds. You've got X-rays, you've got whatever CAT scans, medical waste.
Right.
By the way, if you don't know this, scientists use a lot of radiological markers, and so they create a large amount of radioactive waste. Now, it's not high-level waste, but it's a large amount, and much of that finds its way into the landfill, even though it should not be going there. So when Glenn is talking about this kind of not overexposure, but higher exposure than one would normally expect to receive in, say, before we had all these tools, these wonderful tools. Mm-hmm. They're double-edged sword, right?
Right, yeah, and you think about just the last 100 years of human existence has been a significant shift. Mm-hmm. So we went from probably very low levels of radiation to what would be considered high levels of radiation just as our normal daily life. Mm-hmm. So again, throwing on the potential nuclear fallout, mm-hmm. From the really devastating event that happened in Japan, mm-hmm. It's just adding to an already toxic load.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about several concrete steps that people could take in your article. Mm-hmm. Can you add to that a little bit? Maybe explain a little more.
Yeah. It's nice because when you have the opportunity to do this on a video, you get much more in depth and create a deeper sense of understanding and awareness. So for me, and I'm going to tell you right now is that what I'm going to talk about now is what I'm doing at home. All right, so this isn't just what I'm recommending to people on the internet, mm-hmm. or just to my clients. This is what I'm recommending for myself. This is what I do in my home. Now, the first subject is to talk about potassium iodine. All right, this is an interesting subject right mm-hmm. now because this is another area where it's all over the fence. Mm-hmm. Manny and I were talking earlier about the fact that a lot of people are talking about these mega doses of iodine. Mm-hmm. And share what when that first came up. Share that story about.
Sure. Sure. So whether or not this is the case, this kind of struck me as, potassium iodide tablets are what's suggested by the governmental organizations for extreme radioactive exposure. And that's not what we're facing right now. So everybody's rushing out and buying potassium iodide. And I can tell you well, let's just say hearsay fact that on the West Coast, there's nothing to be had in supermarkets or in the pharmacies. And just to see what the availability was on the East Coast, my wife was actually out in New Jersey last week, and I had her go over to Whole Foods and a couple of other stores to look for iodine supplementation, and they didn't have anything. They were totally, completely cleaned out on the East Coast of the United States. So, and then of course in China, people are buying these massive quantities of anything that has iodine in it. So, that said, potassium iodine likely, again, it's the recommendation for high doses of radiation. It's likely kind of a response to what would have been the likely scenario in the past during fears of nuclear war. So if you're going to get a nuclear war, there's going to be a lot of radiation. There's going to be a lot of missiles that were exploded, especially around the major cities and population centers. And yeah, absolutely, you want to protect. If you're in an emergency situation, you do triage and you take emergency measures. This is a low-level emergency. It's not a high-level emergency like a nuclear war. So given that, the measures that you're going to take, the steps that you're going to take are going to reflect that. Otherwise, you could be incurring some damage to your body by taking these mega doses of potassium iodide. There are some side effects, and they're widely published. You can look them up.
Right, and really well said. And it's just, we want to be clear that we're not talking about mega dosing. We're just talking about getting the amounts of potassium and iodine for proper function within the body to actually be increasing the amount of iodine in the thyroid, so that we can actually help assist and protect ourselves from any nuclear fallout. And so what I recommend and what I take on my own, and to really kind of set this up, is just to understand that when you eat a food that actually has the minerals of potassium and iodine in them, or any food with any mineral for that matter, it comes in a colloidal form. Right? The colloidal form is ingested by your body. It is then converted into an ionized form. Right? Now the ionized form is what your body can use. So the iodine and the potassium that I recommend are both in a liquid form, and they're both already ionized. So for people with challenged digestion, with in poor health that have a tough time with an uptake of nutrients, when you take these forms, they're readily available for your body right now. Right? And there's different ways you can actually take these. Typically, most supplements are based on a 150-pound person. So whenever you're following directions of supplements, that's typically the case. So this is based on 15 drops of iodine 3 times per day, and 20 drops of potassium 3 times a day at the same time. You can either take these out, and the drops can go right out onto your tongue, or you can actually put the combination of the 2 drops, and no, we're not going to be doing shots today. This is to show you this is about 1 ounce of water. So we're filled up to this line. So you could take your 15 drops of iodine, your 20 drops of potassium, put them in 1 ounce of water, and then just drink that down. So there's multiple ways that you can actually take that. If somebody is significantly lower in weight than 115 pounds, you just address accordingly. So you just do the ratio of the weight to the amount of the drops. So that's the first area that I would actually recommend addressing, in conjunction to the thyroid and what's going on from radioactivity from that standpoint. Right, the second area that I feel is really of utmost importance, and I'll be honest with you, this isn't just for this lower level emergency situation. This is just life as we know it. The body, in my opinion, the body's most extensive antioxidant is an antioxidant we produce, and it's called glutathione. Right, now glutathione has many different potential factors of dysfunction in the body, but it's a very potent antioxidant. Right? I want to be clear though, is taking just straight glutathione supplements are very poorly absorbed. So what I always recommend is what's called a glutathione recycler. Right, now the difference in this is not giving you glutathione per se, but we don't want that because you're not absorbing it well. What this does is it gives you the the L-glutamine, the alpha-lipoic acid, the selenium, and the different minerals and vitamins and such that you need for your body to actually be able to produce glutathione. That's the positive. That's the best way that I've seen to actually increase intake or production of glutathione and really increase the protection of what's going on in our world today. And again,
sorry, can I ask you a question? Yeah. So there's been this kind of recent craze over antioxidants, and everything's got a 10 million ORAC level, and lots of marketing around it and hype. So what are those poorly absorbed, just like glutathione is? I mean, given that we've heard so much about antioxidants, like how is this approach, taking recycler, a little bit different, I guess? Well, I think why is it more beneficial than just taking this stuff?
I would actually say that most antioxidants are actually pretty well absorbed. For some reason which I don't have that exact answer. The glutathione is a whole different process.
I see.
But yeah, even other antioxidants and I'm glad you actually mentioned it in that way. Because the other thing that I recommend is we're trying to be proactive here. We're trying to be protective. We can go with some of the old standbys. The one thing that I'm taking, and my wife, and most people I know, we're also taking vitamin D on a regular basis, twice per day, or on a vitamin E. Also, I'm recommending typically approximately 800 to 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C with each meal. Again, just with vitamin C, the half-life, the length of time that it's actually a benefit to your body, is only about 2 hours of vitamin C. So if you're taking these huge doses of vitamin C in the morning, so if you're looking at my recommendation, say, well, I can't take it through the day, I'll take 3,000 in the morning, you're only getting that benefit for the couple hours. So you really want to extend that through the day, because you want protection all day, right?
That's a really good point.
Right. And from the other factors, there's a few other things that I'm recommending. Number one is, as we have the exposure, and it's a recent exposure, right? And it's at a little bit higher level than we're typically used to. I actually use the highest absorbing material on Earth, which is a luvose, which is a luvose clay. It's from a mountain region of Germany. That this will out-absorb basically everything else on the Earth.
Wow.
So you could take the capsules of luvose once a day, throughout your day. I generally recommend you take it with high amounts of water because of the absorbing factor of the luvose. But this will actually bind with other potential toxins and radioactivity, whatever it may be in your gut, to get a release through the colon and out in your bowel movements on your daily basis. So the luvose is something that's very much really understood and respected in the field, because of its absorbing activity. And I was even joking with Manny when we were talking earlier, it's not a bad thing to have around the house too. If you have a couple of glasses of wine, and maybe it's a little bit more than normal, take 5 luvose and a large glass of water before you go to bed, because it'll absorb the alcohol, which is a positive for our health also. And 2 other things is the other one, and I just finished my bottle, so I can't show that bottle, but I actually use another product called Mepro-Rurella, which is a particular chlorella product. Chlorella has a strong ability to actually pull toxins out of the tissue of the body, for removal via the blood and then into the kidneys and liver and such for removal of toxins. Chlorella is an awesome product. So that's another one of the components of actually allowing the body to have a continual detoxification standpoint, to actually, again, be proactive. And once, I can't say this enough, it's not just for this low-level emergency. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to actually be taking these supplements and feeling levels of health they haven't experienced in a while, because there's an emergency, to get them into the place where they're actually going to utilize these. Okay? And lastly, and this is an old, this is an old remedy that, probably our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers talked about, and very, very so underutilized, right? It's just the simple baking soda that you can get in the store, right? A great thing to do, and I would say at this time with the low-level emergency, I would say at least once a week, take a nice warm bath with a pound of baking soda in your bath water. So the typical size of your baking soda box is going to be 1 pound. It's very inexpensive. I would be willing to bet that almost everybody watching this video already has one in their refrigerator that they don't even know what to do with, that they never use it. Maybe they're using it only for a deodorizer. Well, it's time to use that up and get some more, put a new deodorizer in there, and actually get the benefit. Because when you soak in a hot tub with the baking soda, it has a high level of pulling toxicity out through the skin. Now, the one thing that I do recommend with this, though, is I typically, when you're taking these detoxifying baths, I really recommend to stay in there for 10 minutes. Yeah, because you don't want to end up eventually sitting in a pool of toxicity. Yeah, so let it do its job, get out of the bath, and then again, at this point, I would do this once a week. And the other factor that I wanted to mention to Manny is that if either myself or Manny ever thought that we were in a much higher emergency state, you know, let's say that there's a complete meltdown of one or more nuclear reactors in Japan, and being here in California, this is going to reach us anywhere from 36 to 48 hours. You know, we have enough time to get out a newsletter, you know, of how you can actually take higher doses of everything that we're talking about for the protection you would need in a much more extreme emergency. And so I would really recommend that you, if you don't already get our newsletters, to actually either sign up for both of these, you know, because that way you know that you'll get the information that you need if it becomes an emergency state. You know, and I'm sure that Manny will address our newsletters at some point later in the video.
Yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see the links to our respective websites down below, and there's sign-up forms right on the website. If you're watching on the website or from the newsletter, you'll see. If you're on the website, it'll be obvious. From the newsletter, you'll see links to that. So I wanted to add a little something about baking soda. People don't really use this in a lot of ways now. But, you know, you stick it in your fridge, right? And you stick it in your fridge to absorb the nasty smell. So if you just kind of put that in your mind, like the action of that, what is it doing? It's pulling things out of the environment and absorbing them. This is like an environmental absorbent. This is why, you know, there are many scientific and molecular ways to look at health and natural cures and remedies and things like that. But one way is to look at the basic, obvious properties of a substance. And with this one, it pulls baking soda pulls the nasty smell of the air, just like when you put it in water, it pulls the nasty stuff out of your body. Okay, so it has a similar action, and that's just something that I found to be I don't know if you have, but not just with baking soda, but with many natural remedies and cures, is that they have these kind of, not universal, but they have properties about them, and then you can apply those properties to many different situations. So you just kind of have to use common sense and say, like, what does this really do? Not on a molecular level, because it gets very complicated very quickly, and then you have to justify and prove and all that. But oftentimes you can see, it's very easy to see what the action of something is. There was one other thing I wanted to add, and that was when you were talking about the clay,
right,
and you know, dealing with the gut, is that one thing that we didn't really mention, that you know, we're talking about low levels. So there's environmental radiation coming over from Japan. Of course, we have regular exposure. It's at a low level. Okay, so this is why you see in the papers the experts say, you know, nothing to worry about, because it's under their radar. Their radar is basically setting a bar that above which you're going to see serious health consequences, like really fast, and below which they really don't have evidence, scientific studies to back up what would occur. So it's not that there's no danger, it's that they haven't studied it, because they've really been, again, they're studying this. Most of the studies were done on what would be the effect of a nuclear disaster, like nuclear war, something that we faced since the 40s until the 80s, and now we haven't thought about it too much. But that's what most of these studies were done for, is really to back this stuff up. Now, with low levels, you've still got to worry about exposure to the foods that you're eating. So these low levels are going to settle, and the fallout's going to settle on the crops, and then you're going to have animals eating the crops or the byproducts of these crops, whether they're industrial farmed or whether they're small farmed, whatever they are, they're going to be eating this stuff. And we know that radiation accumulates in the body over time. So this is a cumulative exposure situation, okay, that I believe we're talking about right now. And then, of course, environmental exposure to what's in the air. So what's in the air may be very dilute, but it collects in the food, and it collects in the animals that eat the food into larger amounts, just like DDT or any of these other chemicals that we worry about in the fish and the meat and all that, right? So this is the context that we're addressing this situation in. Mm-hmm. And if it becomes like an aerial assault, you know, at a heavy level, then that's when the newsletter will address it in a different way. But these are things that address purification of the body, right? And of course the thyroid, protecting of the thyroid for these environmental buildups. So just to put it in context there.
And the other thing that I just wanted to share before, two more things that are important is, number one is from the standpoint of it's not really readily available to be able to get liquid ionized forms of potassium and iodine. And as Mandy had mentioned, it's hard just to find any form, to be honest with you right now. Yeah, so we do have these in stock for shipment, and what we've done is we've created a package, the radiation protective package, which is going to be a bottle of iodine, the ionized liquid form, the bottle of the potassium, a bottle of the glutathione recycler, a bottle of the Lubos, the highly absorbing clay from the region of Germany, and also a bottle of the Nephroorella, the chlorella, to actually pull the toxins out of the tissue. And we've packaged together these 5 products for a price of $97. And this is, you know, because it's important for Manny and I to be sure that you have an understanding of the use of these products also. So we don't want to just do everything just based on the video. So what we're going to include with this is also a complimentary 10-minute phone consultation. Once you receive your product, you call us up, you set up the appointment, and we'll actually get you set on how to use all of these properly. So we want you to understand that it's not about just going to the internet and buying product and kind of haphazardly taking it. You know, we want you to understand, we're going to be asking you how much you weigh so we know how much is good for you, because we don't want you to be taking too much or not enough. We really want this to be protected for you. So that's, and then we'll have the link to where they can purchase that.
Right, right. So hopefully you found this to be of use. Obviously, we're not here to sell products. We're sharing this information because it's valuable information, it's timely, and we want people to get use out of this. But they're here if you want them, and that way it's easy. Because one thing to note is that these forms are, this is not just a topical iodine that you would pick up in the CVS or the Rite Aid to treat a wound or something like that. This is absolutely not that. You don't really want to ingest that. That could be toxic. So just FYI, this is an ingestible form. So there are other ingestible forms out there. I just wanted to add that so that people aren't out there buying stuff that is going to poison them, because you really want to avoid that. And that's one of the reasons why we brought this out, is because people are they're buying this potassium iodide, which can potentially poison you. And if you look, it's very easy to find out what the side effects are of potassium iodide. It's actually quite toxic. So anyhow, hopefully this has been of use.
Thank you for inviting me to this conversation.
Sure thing.
And for everybody listening, you know, thank you. And I hope we were able to give you some of our knowledge and understanding, and you can actually put this to a positive use for yourself and your family, your friends, and all your loved ones. So thank you.
Sure thing. And the link will be down below to tell you how to get this stuff if you want to. I also encourage you to ask questions, whether on YouTube, if you get the video on the website, whatever. There's ways to ask questions. So reply to your newsletter, whatever it is. Ask questions so that we know what people want to know. If there are things that we did not address, so that we can follow up. Okay? So great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.